Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to continue with the second day of BRICS summit. Lots of leaders from all over the world came to Russia, to the city of Kazan, and as for the 23rd of October, we have additional information that UN Secretary General arrived in Kazan for BRICS summit, and I'll remind you that he refused the UN Secretary General refused to visit the peace summit that was created and conducted by Zelensky a few months ago, but he visited Kazan today. Very important message to the Western countries. Also, we have Mahmoud Abbas arrived in Kazan to participate in the BRICS summit. Also, we have the information that the president of the United Arab Emirates arrived. We have information that the Vietnamese Prime Minister have already arrived, and of course the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, arrived. The president of Republic Belarus is going to come to Kazan today on the 23rd of October. So obviously this is the biggest summit with the biggest and the most important leaders of the world, and nobody from the Western countries were invited and arrived into Kazan to take participation in this summit, even as a guest. Now let's move further and let's talk about the situation on the ground. And first we're going to talk about the South Donetsk direction. As you can see, we have a lot of icons, and the most focus of icons is taking place to the south and to the southwest of Bogoyavlenka. The significant number of FPV drone attacks, and of course, this number of attacks means something. The Russians are preparing exactly the south and the southwestern part of Bogoyavlenka before further attempts to attack. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions from the town of Vuhledar in the direction of Bogoyavlenka. We have changes on the ground. Let's take a look at them. So these are the changes, and this information was confirmed either by pro-Ukrainian mappers and by neutral mappers. The significant progress, the Russians, as you can see, are maintaining the line of combat contact, and the Russians are getting closer and closer to the Ukrainian positions. Currently we don't have information when exactly the Russians are planning to begin the final assault of the village of Bogoyavlenka, but everybody understands that obviously this is going to happen in 2024, maybe in November. Now let's move further and let's talk about the village of Katerinovka. During the previous 24 hours, we have additional changes on the ground, and this information was confirmed by neutral mappers. So the Russians, as for now, control around 40-50% of the settlement. Some military experts are saying that the Russians control even more. The Russians are moving further and further. I'll remind you that during the previous months, the Russians destroyed the bridge, this one that connected the city, the village of Yelizavetovka and the village of Katerinovka itself. For example, in this video we can see the moment when the Russians destroyed the bridge. We understand that since the beginning of October, the Russians mainly were trying to take under control the footholds in the vicinity of the bridge that connected the villages of Antonovka and Katerinovka itself. And as far when the Russians captured the territory, the Ukrainians lost any possibilities for supplying and supporting, and now they suffer significant problems. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Kurokhova direction. We have lots of changes on the ground. As for the town of Gornyak and town of Kurokhovka, during the previous night we got report that the situation in Gornyak is tense. The fighting is gradually moving to the central part of the city. There are already fewer positions that can be held with difficulty. The armed forces of the Russian Federation occupy the northern part, the western and the eastern outskirts. So the situation is very difficult, but as for the previous 24 hours, previous night, we haven't received any changes on the ground. As for Tsukurino, we have lots of changes, and they are very important. As you can see, this is, for example, the map on the 23rd of October, so today, and this is the map on the end of the 22nd of October. So as you can see, during the previous night, we got report that the Russians captured this dense network of the fortifications and the western part of Tsukurino that has the farms, barracks, and so on. So this territory was captured. This information, as you can see, was provided as by pro-Ukrainian mappers and by some geolocation. For example, in this video we can see the destroyed Ukrainian tank that was destroyed in the most western part of Tsukurino. This Ukrainian tank was destroyed as a result of Russian tank attack, and a few seconds later we're going to receive the position of the Russian tank with the Russian flank that destroyed the Ukrainian tank. Just a second, this is the position of Russian tank. So if we go back on map, the Ukrainian vehicle was was destroyed exactly in this point, and the Russian vehicle was located in the area of this intersection of the tree lines. Once again, according to pro-Ukrainian mappers, the western Tsukurino was captured completely. Now let's move to the city of Selydovo, and another day brought additional problems to Ukrainians. The most important updates are coming from the eastern part of the settlement. As you can see, during the previous 24 hours, we have significant changes on the ground. The western part was completely captured by the Russians, and now the clashes are taking place in the central part of the settlement. According to different mappers, the Russians are moving to the most central part. We're talking about this citadel. We have lots of geolocations that were provided by the Ukrainian sources. For example, in this area we can see the movements of the Russian soldiers, and we can find this area on the map. This is the area of the garages. So the Russian soldiers were moving and the Ukrainians were actively droning them. A lot of episodes, a lot of moments, most of them were geolocated, and some of them took place exactly in this area. Based on this video, based on the reports of neutral mappers, based on the report of pro-Ukrainian mappers, we can see the significant progress of the armored force of Russian Federation, and the Russians are not going to stop. Also, we have additional progress in the northern part of Selydovo. The Russians managed to take additional block in the northern part and to get closer to the central part and from the northern area as well. As for the physical cuts of Selydovo itself, the sources are saying that those the Russian attempts to do this were repelled. Currently, the Russians still haven't physically cut the northwestern part of the Selydovo, so the Ukrainians still have some road for evacuations. Very let's say dangerous to use the road due to significant losses, but anyway, so it is something than nothing. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Toretsk agglomeration. During the previous 24 hours, we have reports that the Russians managed to improve their positions in the fields. A few more let's say buildings and few more positions were captured by the Russians. Let's compare the map. This is the situation on the 22nd. This is the situation on the 23rd of October, and this interesting reports are coming from the central citadel. We haven't added this icon on map. We will discuss this later. According to information we have, the Ukrainians managed to restore control over the positions in the central citadel. This information was provided by pro-Russian mappers. Let's wait for additional details. If this information is correct, of course we will adjust the map in Ukrainian favor, or at least we will adjust the map in contested area. Now let's talk about the city of Chasiv Yar, and the situation for the Ukrainians is very difficult. Some pro-Ukrainian sources are saying that the city of Chasiv Yar has already been caught in cauldron, but it's very difficult to understand how exactly the Russians could, let's say, caught the city in cauldron, because there are still a lot of roads for supporting and supplying the garrison of the armored forces of Ukraine, the territory of settlement. But anyway, the Russians are moving, and today we have a lot of changes on the ground, mainly in the eastern part of the settlement. And once again, as for the Chasiv Yar, as for the city of Selydovo, the Russians managed to reach the central part of the city, and currently the clashes are taking place for the main citadel. So as you can see, the changes on the map are significant, and this information was provided us by pro-Russian mappers and by neutral mappers. Neither pro-Ukrainian mappers or any geolocations have confirmed this Russian significant progress. So let's wait for additional videos. Maybe during the day we're going to receive some, and then we will adjust the map, of course, in Russian favor. Once again, the clashes are taking place currently for the central citadel. The Russians have already established complete control over the 30% of the settlement. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Siversk direction. Today some pro-Russian sources reported very interesting piece of news. The Russians are saying that the city of Siversk is now open from all sides. A huge mistake by the Ukrainian armored forces was made. The village of Serebrenka came under control of the Russian armed forces. So some pro-Russian sources reported that somehow, as a result of something unexpected, the Russians managed to break through the Ukraine defense belt and to capture the village of Serebrenka. It's a very weird direction, the Siversk direction. So let's wait, of course, for additional updates. Of course, we don't with this piece of news haven't surprised us, because the Russians established control a few days ago over the Bilagora. So it's something that could happen, right? And but it happened too fast. The only thing I can tell you, that the fall of Serebrenka happened too fast after the fall of Bilagora, but everything might happen. So let's wait for additional updates, and if this information is correct, or if this information is confirmed by different sources. We will adjust the map, of course, in Russian favor. Now let's move further. Very interesting details are coming from the north in Kupiansk direction. The Russians broke through the Ukrainian defense belt and reached the outskirts of Lazova. So these are the changes on the ground for the previous 24 hours. The Russians, this is the situation on the end, by the end of the 22nd of October, and this is the situation at the beginning of the 23rd of October. The Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt, and this information was confirmed either by pro-Russian and neutral mappers. Russians reach the outskirts of Lazova. If Lazova falls, then the Russians will have no problems to connect these two footholds, to connect the forces, to cut the salient, and maybe even to encircle the significant number of Ukrainians who are currently trying to hold the lines inside of this artillery pocket. With this defeat, the entire situation can turn for another 180 degrees, and the Ukrainians will start retreating very fast in the direction of Barova and even further in the direction of Liman. So the situation may speed up in this area very fast. Now let's move to the Sudzha direction. We continue receiving very interesting details. First, according to information we have, the Russians raised the flag in the central part of Volgovka on the territory of this settlement, and this information shows us that the territory was captured by the Russians, at least the northern part, but we still haven't received anything from the south and from the forest. And we have additional changes on the ground between the villages of Tolstoy Lyukhin and Zelyony Shlях. So this area used to be considered as contested area, but now we have enough of geolocations to confirm that this field is under complete Russian control. These changes were made based on this video, and in this video we can see the Russians' vehicle that were moving exactly along this territory. So this is the situation on the ground, and that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.